Lingering spirits. If there's one thing I have learned through feeling this kind of stuff, it would be to be careful what I wish for. Back when I was a kid, I just loved reading about the occult, ghosts, aliens, and everything about them. I always wished to feel a presence in one way or another. When I was in high school, my dad, who I really loved, always took me to school, and he would continuously scold me when I got bad grades. He would slap me silly to knock some sense into me, and this was how it happens every time I got a low grade. So one day while we were off to school, it was a grading week and I knew what I got, so naturally, I was scared as hell that my father would shout his head off to lecture and talk sense into me. On the way to school, while waiting for his speech about working hard and success, I was pleasantly surprised that he did not slap me or hit me to make his point. I thought it was weird and all, but I certainly did not mind it. We get to school, and as I get out of the car, I said my goodbye and kissed my dad's cheek. For some strange reason, I stared at him for what felt like a minute, and he was just smiling. He told me to study hard so I can reach my dreams. So I grabbed my bag and went to school. While listening to my last subject before we went to lunch, all of a sudden our classroom was overwhelmed with the smell of candles. It's as if we lit a bunch of candles like you would typically do in a church. All the kids were spooked by the scent of candles, and naturally we started to tease each other that a ghost was in our room. Some were saying it might be one of those classmates who were absent that day. As the commotion died down, it was weird that the room still smelled like burning candles. We quickly moved on from it and dismissed it as some random scent that came from the other rooms. My class ended and I proceeded to the washroom to wash my face before my next class. As I went to my next class, I passed by that same classroom, which for some odd reason still smelled like someone was burning candles. So that got me spooked, and I ran to the room where I am supposed to attend my last class before going home. While walking on my way home, I inched closer to my house. I noticed something glowing from the gate of the house, and I thought there was some kind of procession going on. What I saw in front of our house were candles, and lots of them. This freaked me out, so I started running toward our house, only to see more candles burning on one of our outdoor tables. I made my way inside the house and asked my mom why there were lots of candles outside. Her reply was something that I never dreamt of hearing from anybody I loved. She said that plane that my dad boarded this morning had gone missing. Teary-eyed and confused, I asked her when did this happen. She told me it happened around lunchtime, the same time we smelled those candles at school. This made me fall to my knees and cry. Soon enough, we realized that my dad was one of the passengers of an ill-fated airplane which crashed into the mountains south of the Philippines. That evening, while we were hoping to see him alive, we stayed up until the wee hours of the morning to contact the company that owned the plane and check what was the latest news on the tragedy. The phone rang at 3 a.m. in the morning and I answered. No one was responding on the other end, and all I heard was the wind blowing through the mouthpiece. It was as if the one calling us was in a windy place or high in the mountains. This eventually went on for the whole week, where the phone rang at exactly 3 a.m. and the same windy noise filled the earpiece of the phone. I always picked the phone up, and for some reason, this time I uttered, "Dad, I love you," while listening to the windy background emanating from the phone. After saying those words, the other line hung up and never called again. I knew of rumors that my dad made his presence felt to our neighbors the time he died. Our next door neighbor said he saw him wearing white and walked with a smile on his face. Some saw him at his former place of work, also wearing white and standing outside of his car, which he always left when he went to the province. To this day, people who had the ability to sense these kinds of things would always tell us that he is still with us. Every now and then when I go use the PC late at night, I still hear footsteps walking up the flight of stairs towards my room as if someone was checking up on me. Sometimes I see figures at the corner of my eye walking outside our garden too. No one really knows what is happening. It is already 1:47 a.m. here, and I am kind of spooked that I decided to share this with you guys at this time of the day. I am currently hearing someone walking around the house even though everyone is asleep. I have come to terms that it is my dad. Damn, I miss my dad. When I was younger, about 7 years old, I lived in Mexico with my family. I grew up hearing all kinds of scary stories there. Stories about La Llorona, evil spirits, devil stories, etc. Well, one night I overheard my parents talking about some occurrence that went down at a nightclub a few years prior. They said that everyone was dancing and having a great time, and there was a bull riding competition. People were giving it a try, but everyone failed to stay on the mechanical bull for long, until this very nicely groomed guy walked into the club. All the girls were attracted to him, so everybody focused their attention on him. He gets on the mechanical bull and rides it without falling off. The story goes that after he won, they decided to do it one more time, but really try hard and make him fall. The crowd is really into this guy and girls are cheering him on, when all of a sudden his cowboy boot falls off. People then noticed he had a cow's hoof. Everyone started screaming in fear, and the lights flickered and turned completely off. When the lights came back on, there was a girl with scratch marks on her back, and the man was nowhere to be seen. To this day, many people believe it was the devil. When I was also in Mexico, I used to have problems going to sleep. I wouldn't be able to go to sleep until the wee hours of 1 to 2 a.m. This happened every night when I was 7 years old. There was one night that I can still remember perfectly. I was in my room trying to go to sleep on my cool Lamborghini car bed when I decided to look at the time. As I get my head out of the blankets and look across the room at the clock, I see a dark figure, sort of like a shadow of a man, leaning against my closet. I looked at the figure and I could see him perfectly. It was a man with a cowboy hat. He kind of resembled the Marlboro, cigarettes, man. I freaked out and screamed for my parents, and when they turned the lights on, the man was gone. The crazy thing about this story is that I've talked to other people that have seen the same figure. They have told me about it without them knowing it happened to me. I've even read about it in my Chicano studies class. We had to read about folklore, and the figure came up in there. We've since moved to the States, and I have not had those paranormal experiences anymore. True poltergeist experience. I need some advice on how to deal with the spirit poltergeist living in my girlfriend's house. She moved into her parents' place a year back. Every time she's gone back home, she's always had weird experiences with what she thought was some spirit. Examples include TVs turning on randomly at night as she slept, and hearing voices in the hallway when she showers. I personally never experienced any kind of ghost stuff before, but there was this one weekend when I went to stay with her because she had to take care of the house solo. This was last Labor Day weekend. Nothing happened the first 2 nights, but around 5 a.m. on the third night, she said I just started shaking and kicking really, really hard, almost like I was possessed. She said I made a pretty big king-size bed move like it weighed nothing. She didn't think anything of it until the next night. The same thing happened again. She still didn't think much of it at this point, so we let it go. On the 4th night we laid in bed, watching TV, I tried to change the channel and looked down at the remote control but couldn't see much. I asked her to turn on the light for me so I could see the controller to change the channel, and freakishly, the light in the room just turned on automatically. That really freaked us out, and instantly, I became a believer in her weird feelings about this house. She tried to play it off, and I joked, "Hey, at least it's trying to help." But within 10 minutes, she said, "Let's go back to your place. I am not staying here." Since then, over the last year and a couple months, she's had the occasional weird things go on. Like some weird breathing one time when we talked over the phone, and she was in her room by herself. It creeped her out, but nothing as blatantly as the light turning on by itself. Fast forward to 2 weeks ago, She had a friend from out of town come stay at her place. Her friend arrived kind of late, about 12 midnight, and went straight to bed. She told my girlfriend that as soon as she turned off the light that night, she heard breathing in her ear and would turn on the light as soon as she did. The breathing would stop after she turned on the lights. This happened a couple of times until she finally fell asleep. Later that night, she was awoken by a voice from above in the ceiling saying softly, "Help me." It was a man's voice, which freaked her out. She slept with the light on for the rest of the night. My question is, what does she do here? Anyone have tips? It sounds like a poor spirit that needs help. Maybe a priest or medium to talk to it to help it go to the light? Anyone have any real experience? I feel bad for my girlfriend because she is completely scared. Any help is greatly appreciated.